There are some images that you can't find in your typical history books, images that tell stories far more haunting and personal. Like this desperate veteran who approached King George V's carriage, or what about the timeless bond between humans and nature? Well, just keep watching, because today we'll show you some of the most eerie and powerful colorized photographs that history has forgotten to mention.
His personality was reserved and unassuming, and yet he was monarch over the largest empire.
In 1920, a veteran of World War I approached King George V by running alongside his coach and asking for money. It was remarkable how close the man got to the king. Just 6 years before, Archduke Franz Ferdinand had been assassinated by a man who approached his carriage in a similar manner, which had led to World War I. This event occurred during a time when security for high-ranking officials like the king would have been expected to be much tighter due to concerns after the war. Despite this, the veteran managed to make his way up to the king's coach, a moment that must have shocked many. The war had left many veterans in poor economic conditions, and some, like this man, were desperate enough to take drastic steps to seek assistance. But what about the sniper known as the White Death? What he accomplished in just 100 days will leave you speechless.
Where did the cannabis we know today come from? Its wild beginnings remain unknown.
In 1973, a grandmother won first prize for her marijuana plant at the California City County Fair. This unusual event highlights the changing attitudes towards cannabis at the time. Interesting thing about this image is how it challenges stereotypes, showing that even elderly people were involved in growing marijuana, a practice that would later become more accepted in certain parts of the world.
Roaring allows lions to claim their territory by communicating their presence.
In 1731, King Frederick I of Sweden was gifted a lion, which was one of the first lions in Scandinavia. The lion did not live long after arriving in Sweden and was later given to a taxidermist to preserve. However, the taxidermist, along with the museum keepers, had never actually seen a lion before and did not know how they were supposed to look. As a result, the preserved lion was highly inaccurate in its appearance, especially in its face. The taxidermist's unfamiliarity with the animal led to one of the most famous examples of incorrect taxidermy. The lion's face looks more like a caricature than a real animal, with exaggerated features that do not resemble a lion at all. In 1887, the O'Halloran sisters stood bravely against eviction officers who came to remove their family during the Irish Land War. Armed with poles and boiling water, they successfully defended their home. This act of defiance became a symbol of resistance during that era. John Smith, also known as the White Wolf, was an elderly Chippewa man photographed in 1914. He was believed to be one of the oldest living Native Americans at the time, born as early as 1784.
This is how I know I'm alive.
In 1908, the famous escape artist Harry Houdini performed a dangerous stunt by jumping off the Harvard Bridge into the Charles River in Boston while locked in chains. Houdini was well known for his ability to escape from handcuffs, chains, and locked containers, but this stunt was especially risky because it involved a 30-foot drop into the river. Houdini was quoted as saying that while there was always a chance he might not be able to free himself, he was a good swimmer and had confidence in his abilities. Approximately 20,000 spectators, including the mayors of Boston and Cambridge, gathered to witness the daring escape. After Houdini jumped into the river, the crowd waited for 40 seconds before he resurfaced, holding the shackles in his hands.
We may never know his real name, but archaeologists call him
Old Krogan Man is the name given to a well-preserved body from the Ice Age, discovered in June 2003 in Ireland. The body is believed to date back to some time between 362 BC and 175 BC. Based on the measurements of his arm span, Old Krogan Man is thought to have been exceptionally tall for his time, standing approximately 6 feet 6 inches. The preservation of the body allowed for detailed analysis of his last meal, which was determined to be wheat and buttermilk. However, evidence from his remains suggests that for at least 4 months before his death, he had consumed a diet rich in meat.
The world's mightiest liner took her first trip from Britain to America in a coat of dull grey paint.
In 1945, the RMS Queen Elizabeth arrived in New York Harbor, bringing back thousands of soldiers from Europe at the end of World War II. The ship had been used to transport troops during the war, and on this particular voyage, it carried more than 15,000 soldiers. In 1954, Anne Elizabeth Fowler Hodges became the first documented person to be struck by a meteorite and survive. While she was napping on her couch in Sylacauga, Alabama, a grapefruit-sized meteorite crashed through the roof of her house. The meteorite hit a large wooden console radio before striking Hodges, leaving her with severe bruising on one side of her body. Despite the force of the impact, Hodges survived and was able to walk. The event attracted worldwide attention, as meteorite strikes on humans are extremely rare. In 1860, Japanese archers practiced the traditional martial art of Kyudo, which translates to the way of the bow. Kyudo is one of Japan's oldest martial arts, dating back thousands of years, and is focused on developing precision, concentration, and a sense of calm through archery. The bow used in Kyudo, called a yumi, is extremely tall, often exceeding the height of the archer. This gives the bow a unique shape and makes it highly effective for long-distance shooting. By 1860, the use of bows in warfare had been mostly replaced by firearms, but Kyudo remained an important practice in Japan. The men in this photograph are seen using traditional techniques, likely passed down through generations. Kyudo was not only a method of combat, but also a form of meditation and self-discipline.
How do you feel now, all of you together?
I feel very, very happy.
In Auschwitz, 3 Jewish men arrived on the same day during the Holocaust and were tattooed with identification numbers just 10 digits apart. Decades later, in 2017, these men reunited for the first time in 73 years as part of a project called the Last Eyewitness Project. Each of them had survived the horrors of Auschwitz, where millions of people were killed during World War II. The men had been teenagers when they were sent to the concentration camp, and after being separated, they did not know if the others had survived.
Marches across a frozen landscape. This is the Winter War, Stalin's invasion of Finland.
Simo Häyhä, also known as the White Death, was a Finnish sniper who served during the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union from 1939 to 1940. Häyhä gained his reputation as a deadly sniper, killing over 500 Soviet soldiers in less than 100 days using a rifle without a scope. His ability to stay hidden and shoot accurately in the harsh winter conditions made him a significant threat to the Soviet forces. Häyhä and just 31 other Finnish soldiers held off a group of 4,000 Soviet troops during the war, demonstrating his incredible skill and endurance. Later, there is a photograph of an 11-year-old coal miner, Otha Porter Martin, that hides something shocking about his future that you won't believe. In 1930, a photo was taken of Albert Einstein playing the violin, an instrument he had loved since childhood. While Einstein is most famous for his groundbreaking work in physics, particularly his theory of relativity, music played an important role in his life. He began playing the violin at a young age and continued to play throughout his life.
A representative from Israel's Antiquities Authority told CBS News,
It was amazing.
In 2021, a 900-year-old crusader sword was discovered off the northern coast of Israel. The sword, made of iron and measuring nearly 4 feet in length, was found by a diver who was exploring the seabed. It is believed that the sword belonged to a crusader who was on his way to the Holy Land during the Crusades around the year 1100. This sword was remarkably well preserved, despite spending centuries underwater, and is thought to have been lost during a battle or shipwreck. The discovery of the sword provided valuable insight into the weapons and tools used by the Crusaders during their expeditions to the Middle East. Archaeologists were excited about the find, as it added to their growing collection of artifacts from the Crusades found in the region. In 1945, a 16-year-old German soldier named Hans-Georg Henk was captured by the U.S. Ninth Army in Germany. The photograph taken at the moment of his capture shows him crying, which became an iconic image symbolizing the emotional toll of war. Henk had joined the Luftwaffe anti-air squad after his mother died in 1944, leaving his family in a state of poverty. With his father having died earlier in 1938, Henk was forced to find a way to support his siblings. The Luftwaffe provided an opportunity for young boys to serve and earn money. However, by 1945, Germany was facing inevitable defeat in World War II, and Henk, like many other young soldiers, was overwhelmed by the collapse of the world he had known. A beach in Iran was captured in a photograph just a few months before the Islamic Revolution of 1978. The image reflects a time when life in Iran was significantly different from the post-revolution period. Iran, under the leadership of Shah, was in a phase of rapid modernization, and many aspects of society had been influenced by Western culture. The beachgoers in the image are dressed in Western-style clothing, enjoying a time of relative freedom, but not long after this movement, the political climate in the country shifted dramatically, leading to the fall of the Shah and the establishment of an Islamic Republic.
As the ceiling started.
In 1940, during the Blitz, a young bride refused to let the bombing of London ruin her wedding day. Despite the air raids, she carried on with her wedding, in a show of resilience and determination. The Blitz, a German bombing campaign during World War II, targeted London and other cities in the United Kingdom. It was a time of constant fear and destruction as bombs fell on homes, factories, and landmarks. The bride's decision to proceed with her wedding, even as bombs were falling, symbolized the British spirit of defiance. Many Londoners tried to carry on with their lives, even as their city was under siege. During the Blitz in World War II, Londoners sought refuge in underground tunnels as bombs rained down on the city. One striking image shows a woman kneeling beside a child in an underground tunnel. London built a network of deep-level shelters to protect its citizens from the German bombing campaign. The shelters, which were built under London Underground stations, could hold up to 8,000 people. Though the construction of these shelters began in 1940, they were not completed until 1942, after the worst of the Blitz was over. The shelters were first used by the government, but as bombing intensified, they were eventually opened to the public in 1944. The tunnels offered a temporary escape from the devastation above, and many families spent long nights in these shelters, huddled together for safety. In 1913, Stéphane Passet, a French photographer, came across a woman in Mongolia who was being punished for adultery. The woman was trapped inside a wooden cage in the desert, left to die of starvation. Passet took a haunting photograph of her, capturing a cruel moment of traditional punishment. The Mongolian woman was given small amounts of food and water to prolong her suffering. Adultery, at the time, was considered a grave crime in Mongolia, and the punishment was harsh and public. Despite witnessing this horrific act, Passet chose not to intervene, likely out of fear of angering local authorities or interfering with cultural laws. The photograph remains a powerful and disturbing image. illustrating the brutal forms of justice that were practiced in some parts of the world. In 1918, a Senegalese soldier who had lost both arms during World War I was photographed writing a letter with his new prosthetic limbs at a rehabilitation center in Paris. The soldier was part of the Senegalese Tirailleurs, a group of colonial infantrymen who fought for France during the war. Many soldiers from the French colonies were brought to Europe to fight on the front lines where they faced brutal conditions. The rehabilitation school in Paris helped soldiers who had been severely injured to adapt to their new lives. The Senegalese soldier's determination to write, despite his injuries, reflects the incredible resilience of those who had suffered in the war. The image also highlights the contributions of African soldiers in World War I, a part of history that is often overlooked. In 1908, an 11-year-old boy named Otha Porter Martin was photographed working as a coal miner at the Turkey Knob Mine in West Virginia. As a tipple boy, his job was to load coal into railroad cars for transport. Child labor was common in the United States during the early 20th century, especially in industries like coal mining, where young boys were used for dangerous and exhausting work. Otha's life as a coal miner was hard and filled with risks, as mines were notorious for accidents and health hazards. Despite starting work at such a young age, Otha went on to live a long life, passing away in 1985. His story is a reminder of the harsh conditions faced by child laborers during this period and the fight for labor reforms that eventually lead to laws protecting children from such exploitation. In 1972, two childhood friends, Guy Bernieu and Jean-Yvonne Antoniak, found themselves on opposite sides of a protest in Saint-Brieuc, France. One had become a worker, while the other had joined the police. During the demonstration, they had unexpectedly crossed paths, and a photographer captured the moment of their reunion. They had grown up together, attended the same high school, and had been inseparable during their youth. But life had taken them in different directions, and now they stood on opposing sides of a social conflict. The photo, taken by Jacques Gourmelin, became iconic because it showed how deeply divided France was at the time. But it also showed the personal connections that can still exist in moments of division. The two men, despite their different roles in society, shared a past that could not be erased by the protest happening around them. And with that, we are already halfway through the list. So, before we continue, just make sure to give this video a like and also hit that subscribe button while you're down there. Adam Rayner holds a unique place in medical history as the only person to have been both a dwarf and a giant. Born in Austria in 1899, Rayner was unusually short for most of his early life. By the age of 19, he stood just 3 feet 8 inches tall. But at the age of 21, Rayner began a rapid and unexpected growth spurt due to a tumor on his pituitary gland, which controls growth. Over the next decade, Rayner grew to a height of over 7 feet. His condition caused numerous health problems, including spinal curvature and difficulty walking. His body could not cope with the rapid changes, and he spent much of his life bedridden. Rayner's unusual growth pattern fascinated doctors, who studied his case extensively. In 1930, American artist Grant Wood painted one of the most famous images in American art history, American Gothic. The painting depicts a farmer standing beside his daughter, although many viewers mistakenly assume she is his wife. The house in the background, with its pointed window, is designed in the Gothic architectural style, which gives the painting its name. Wood used his sister, Nan Wood Graham, and his dentist, Dr. Brian McKeeby, as models for the iconic figures. The stern expression on their faces have led to many interpretations of the painting's meaning, ranging from a critique of rural life to a celebration of American resilience. Despite the somber mood of the painting, it became an instant classic, symbolizing a certain stoic determination in the face of hardship. American Gothic continues to be one of the most recognizable and parodied works of art. But when that bin Laden family quietly visited Sweden in 1971, they left behind something far more surprising than their wealth. In 1939, Dorothea Lange captured a haunting image of a mother and her child during the Great Depression. The photograph, taken in Tule Lake, California, is one of many that Lange shot while documenting the lives of migrant workers and the poor during this period. The Great Depression was a time of widespread poverty and unemployment, and Lange's photographs brought attention to the struggles of ordinary Americans. The mother in the image looks tired and worn, reflecting on the hardships of life during the economic crisis. Lange's work played a crucial role in raising awareness about the dire conditions faced by millions of people, and her photographs are still regarded as some of the most powerful images of the era. The Great Depression was a turning point in American history, leading to significant changes in government policy and the creation of programs aimed at helping those in need. On Valentine's Day 1945, U.S. Army technician Alvin Harley received a kiss from a liberated French girl. The photograph captures a moment of joy and relief as Allied forces were freeing parts of Europe from Nazi occupation during World War II. The liberation of France had been a long and bloody process, with battles fought to push back German forces. In 1915, Benito Mussolini was arrested for his opposition to Italy's neutrality during World War I. At this time, Mussolini was a socialist, but he was increasingly distancing himself from the socialist movement. He believed that Italy should join the war. This led to his conflicts with the Italian Socialist Party. His arrest didn't stop his rise to power, though. Just a few years later, he became the leader of the National Fascist Party and eventually Italy's prime minister. In 1937, Leon Trotsky found refuge in Mexico after being exiled from the Soviet Union by Stalin. He was taken in by Diego Rivera and his wife, Frida Kahlo, during his stay. Trotsky's time in Mexico was filled with political tension, but he formed a close friendship with Frida. This photo shows Trotsky with his wife, Natalia Sedova, and Frida Kahlo. Samson Beaver was a respected Stoney Indian guide in Canada. In this 1907 photo, he is seen with his wife Leah and their daughter Frances Louise. Samson had a deep knowledge of the wilderness and is most remembered for guiding explorers through uncharted areas. He played a key role in helping people navigate dangerous terrains. Claude Monet, the famous French painter, is seen here in 1809 in his beautiful garden in Giverny. This garden was not just a place of rest, but it was also his inspiration. Monet's passion for nature is reflected in his paintings, particularly his famous Water Lilies series. His garden was designed with great care, and it became the subject of many of his later works. This humorous photo from 1916 shows a German soldier during World War I standing in the snow with a cat perched on his helmet. Dressed in only a tank top, boots, and helmet, the soldier braved the cold with his feline companion. Despite the harsh conditions of war, moments of lightheartedness like this one show that soldiers often found ways to cope with the misery of the trenches. Sophie Scholl, along with her brother Hans, founded the White Rose Student Resistance Group in Nazi Germany. In 1943, she was arrested for distributing anti-Nazi leaflets at the University of Munich. The White Rose advocated for passive resistance against Hitler's regime, but Sophie and her brother paid the ultimate price for their beliefs. They were both executed by guillotine. Sophie Scholl was only 22 years old at the time of her death. In this 1905 photograph, a Navarro woman is wearing a blanket under the shade of a cottonwood tree in Canyon de Chelly, Arizona. Weaving was an important tradition for the Navarro people, passed down from generation to generation. It was not only a skill, but also an art form. Navarro blankets were known for their intricate designs and vibrant colors, and they played a crucial role in both Navarro culture and economy.
The end is near, so I face.
In 1937, Long before Elvis Presley became a global icon, he was a young boy living with his parents in Tupelo, Mississippi. This photo shows Elvis with his mother, Gladys, and his father, Vernon. His family lived in modest conditions, but they were close-knit. Elvis's relationship with his mother was especially strong, and she was one of the most important influences in his life.
When you're heading to the Amalfi Coast, and you really have to go to the Amalfi Coast at least once.
The town of Sorrento, located on the Amalfi Coast in Italy, has long been a popular destination for travelers due to its stunning views of the Mediterranean Sea. This photo from 1888 shows Sorrento in a quieter time before the explosion of tourism. The cliffs, charming buildings, and peaceful waters create a serene picture of life along the coast. In 1951, Frida Kahlo was photographed holding a sugar skull, which is a traditional Mexican symbol for the Day of the Dead. The sugar skull represents death and the cycle of life, but is often used in a celebratory context during the Day of the Dead festivals. Frida's life was filled with pain and suffering due to her physical ailments, but she embraced death and incorporated it into her art. This photo captures her unique relationship with mortality, which she often explored in her paintings. Frida's life and art were deeply intertwined with her Mexican heritage and cultural traditions.
Of 4 million, and only 500,000 literate males struggled to absorb such unprecedented wealth. In response,
in 1971, the bin Laden family visited Sweden. At the time, they were not widely known, but were a wealthy and influential family from Saudi Arabia. Their presence in Europe, especially Sweden, was a sign of their global reach. But what about Curtis's last photo of these three horns? There's something hidden in its simplicity that will shock you. In 1990, British Airways Flight 5390 experienced a terrifying incident when an improperly installed windscreen panel separated from its frame while the plane was flying over Didcot, Oxfordshire. As a result, the captain, Timothy Lancaster, was partially sucked out of the aircraft. His body was held in place by the window frame, while flight attendants worked quickly to pull him back inside. For 20 minutes, the flight attendants held on to Lancaster, while the first officer, Alastair Atchison, took control of the plane and made an emergency landing at Southampton Airport. Remarkably, Lancaster survived the ordeal, although he suffered frostbite, bruising, and fractures to his arm and wrist. Flight attendant Nigel Ogden, who had helped hold Lancaster in place, also sustained minor injuries. There were no other injuries among the passengers or crew, and the flight became known for the miraculous survival of the captain under extreme circumstances. In 1945, 2 American soldiers took a moment during the war to add humor to a serious situation. They personalized 2 155mm artillery shells with the words "Easter eggs" aimed at Adolf Hitler. It was a mix of wit and military duty. Richard and Mildred Loving's love story led to a groundbreaking Supreme Court case in 1967 that changed America. Their fight against anti-miscegenation laws in Virginia resulted in the court ruling that state bans on interracial marriage were unconstitutional. In 1929, mailman Ann Sorensen posed with his heavy load of Christmas mail and parcels in Chicago. The photo captures the hard work mail carriers faced during the holiday season, even back then. One thing about this image is how it represents a time before modern technology made communication easier, making mail a lifeline for people to connect with loved ones. Joseph Two Bulls was a Dakota Sioux man whose portrait was taken around 1900. The image shows him dressed in traditional Native American clothing, symbolizing his cultural heritage. One notable thing about this photo is that it captures a moment in time when Native Americans were struggling to preserve their identity in the face of encroaching Western culture. The Montparnasse derailment occurred on October 22, 1895, in Paris, France. The train, which was running late, entered the station too fast as the driver tried to make up for lost time. The air brakes on the train failed, and the train crashed through the buffer stop at the end of the line. The train did not stop there, but continued to cross the station concourse before breaking through the station wall. The locomotive then fell from the station onto the street below, standing on its nose at the Place de Rennes. A woman on the street was killed by falling masonry from the station wall. The crash became famous due to the dramatic image of the train hanging out of the station.
Pioneering pilot, the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to the mainland U.S., and also the...
Amelia Earhart was a pioneering aviator known for her daring flights across the world. She disappeared in 1937 while attempting to fly around the globe, but her legacy continues. One important thing about Earhart is how she broke barriers for women in aviation and inspired generations of women to follow their dreams regardless of societal expectations.
Some kind of judge or lawyers? Maybe not.
In 1940, a man known as Popeye had been serving for 21 years aboard the HMS Rodney as a leading stoker. A stoker in the Royal Navy was responsible for maintaining and operating the ship's engines, a tough and demanding job that required physical strength and endurance. Popeye was a nickname likely given to him due to his appearance or his strength, much like the famous cartoon character. Serving during World War II, HMS Rodney was an important battleship in the Royal Navy. The photo of Popeye taken in 1940 captures him as a man deeply committed to his duties, despite the dangers of war. At that time, the ship was involved in various operations, including hunting down enemy ships. It was no easy task to keep a battleship like HMS Rodney functioning, but Popeye and the other stokers worked tirelessly to ensure the engines kept running smoothly, a critical role in the ship's performance. This last photograph of 3 horses, taken by Edward S. Curtis around 1905, captures the majesty and strength of these animals. Curtis was known for his photography of Native American life, and this image is no different. The thing about this photo is its simplicity, yet deep connection to the natural world, showing the importance of horses in many Native American cultures. But if you think that's the only secret history holds, then I think you should check out this video on your right-hand side.